So yeah, those just things we got to look at, man. We can't, you can't ignore the things. Like, you got to understand, and you got to ask yourself how important it is to have a kid now, and where's going to be your influence, like, on that kid. Where's going to be, do you want 10% of influence? Like, when we was coming up, we wanted to be like, I wanted to be like LL, Rakim, rappers I seen. So it's no way around it. But the problem is, we can only see that like 2% out the whole day. You know what I'm saying? Kids nowadays influenced by that stuff 80% of the time in a day, because while they at school, they're being influenced by it. When they come home from school, they're being influenced by it more than what we could even have phones back in the day. So we weren't sitting in our room with phones on social media looking at booty shaking and stuff like that. We couldn't do that. We didn't have phones. And even without the phones, we didn't even have TVs in our room. We can do that. And then if we did have TVs in our room, we didn't even have cable in our rooms to where we can look at that stuff. So you got to understand, your greatest fight would not be any of what I just named. And this is what's really major. As a wise man, you have to look at this. If you're not looking at this, you got to look at the times ahead. Wise men look at times ahead, not the times now, but times ahead. So if you're a wise man, you're looking at this. Number one, are you going to instill godliness into your kid or your children, right? Now, what's your influence? What's your battle in the next 5 or 10 years with the world the way it is now? Anybody know that this world has changed? We have seen the change in the world. So you're not questioning me on have the world changed. We know the world changed. So the next 5 or 10 years, you trying to instill godliness into your children and make your children be grounded and be rooted in the word of God. That's a fight. This is a fight that you're going to have. Do you want to go along? Do you want to face that battle? So you got to ask yourself these things, because times have changed. Your children is not, the average child nowadays coming up has zero godliness. I hate to say it. That's average. If the average parent does not have their child in the word of God. We just know that. We know there's some, because it still got churches, so we know there's some. The average child nowadays, like, I never forget, I come out the house, I see children on Sundays playing basketball. This been the last 5, 6, 7 years I'm seeing this. They not knowing nothing about no God or nothing like that. It's going to get even worse. It has gotten even worse. So you got to ask yourself, next 5, 10 years from now, will I be able to instill godliness in my children and still, this is the key thing, still be able to make my children love me? Because you got to understand, instilling godliness in your children is taking away a lot of these devices and a lot of these things that the world has gave us that prevents us from instilling godliness in our children. So it's not a two-way thing. You can't be giving your children all these devices and stuff and then say, well, man, instill godliness in them, because you're not going to be able to do that, because the device is going to control. That's why it's called a device. So you got to be able to stand, or you're going to, that's why you see even a lot of church people. And that's why I don't, church people and believers are different. And that's not a denomination. You know what I'm saying? It's not a denomination with that. Church people are church people. Like, most of the church people, when this whole thing hit, they panicked. Those are not believers. Believers don't panic, because we already know, because we've been geared up by God to understand what's coming, in the future. So we was already geared up spiritually and prepared for this moment. So you can't scare believers, but you can scare church people. That's a difference. So church people, they're not going to stand on nothing. They're going to follow the agenda, and they're going to do it accordingly. So this don't really go for those type of people. This go for people that really standing and have to ask themselves these questions. Am I going to have the most influence over my kids? Be able to instill godliness in my children without them hating me, because I won't let them do what the world telling them they should do. That's a fight. You got to look at this fight now. I'm just bringing it to you. It's also a fight of, do I have the right mate that we both understand the fight together, so the enemy will not be able to use one or the other to split us up. So now, because when that happened, the foundation is broke. So now you back to square one and you got a single parent home. So these things you got to address, baby. The average person, they don't look at these things, just make kids. I was watching a show, and the show is about a guy. He traveled to the coldest country in the world, but he also traveled to the poorest country in the world.
Hello everyone, Ruhi Chenet here. We are in Burundi, which has been chosen as per the analysis reports of the World Bank, IMF, and many other official institutions as the poorest country in the world.
And he made a video about it, and I'm just show you what I'm saying. These people were so poor, they was making like $15 a month. If you'd have seen the sleeping, areas that they were sleeping in, and what they had to eat and what they had to wear, man, was unbelievable. They were so poor, but they were still making children. Some of them had 7, 6, 7, 8 kids. And you are the poorest, but you're still making big families. Think about this. The children dying of starvation. And so what I'm saying is, because the average person does not take this stuff in consideration. We just make children. And that's the point that I'm trying to make. You got to look toward the future and say, am I able to do these things that I mentioned? Or are we just going to still make children because we want children? That's not wise. And it's not wise, and it's not fair to the children. So these things we got to think about, man. Don't just have children just to have children and say I'm a single parent, because that became the norm. How about making children in wedlock if you're going to make them? But at the same time, you have to say, as men, you have to say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, how is it going to be raising children? And you have to say, am I going to be able to raise my child? Not visit my child, not see my child. I'm talking about raising my child. So when it comes to making children, is it a smart thing to do in this day and age? I wouldn't say it is, man. But hey, it's your call. Until next time, be out.